أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. Suzy Ismail from Cornerstone, and I'm happy to be with you again as we continue our Ramadan Resilience Program. So we mentioned in our last episode some of the diagnoses that we are seeing more and more of, which are more intense manifestations of mental health illnesses. We talked a little bit about OCD and scrupulosity in particular. We talked a little bit about BPD-1 and BPD-2, recognizing that manic depressive episodes may be linked to bipolar disorder, but borderline personality disorder is another type of diagnosis that we are seeing more and more of, and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, when we look at trauma responses, we see that the way that we process trauma differs, and the way that we classify trauma. So for one person, their trauma may be an experience like being a forced migrant, experiencing losing their home, losing their family, losing their loved ones, and this could be their traumatic experience. For someone else, their trauma may be losing a friendship, their trauma may be losing a job, their trauma may be feeling dissatisfied because they're not where they wanted to be. That doesn't decrease the intensity of how they feel about their trauma. So many times we'll see comparisons when someone is trying to make someone feel better, someone who's experienced trauma and a friend, a parent is trying to make them feel better. They might say something like, say alhamdulillah, at least you have a roof over your head. Say alhamdulillah, think about those people that are starving and don't have food. That minimization of trauma and the response to trauma actually intensifies trauma. So we don't want to minimize, we want to validate, we want to understand that when Allah Azza wa Jal guides us in the Quran with the reminder of لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها, that He will not give a soul or burden a soul with more than that soul can bear, it means that each of us will have the test that's written for us. It's going to be the test that we need, not always the test that we want. And so recognizing that our test is hand-tailored by Allah Azza wa Jal for us is an important part of the healing process. And that rather than questioning why me, instead recognizing and understanding that this is the test that Allah Azza wa Jal has chosen for me. Now, what do we do when we have this test? What do we do when we recognize that we're struggling with a mental health illness, whether it's on the scale of what we talked about in earlier episodes in terms of anxiety or depression, or whether it's on a scale of a diagnosable illness like OCD, BPD, or disorder that is evident in that way. So, first of all, understanding who to go to. We used the example before of someone had broken their leg. You wouldn't take them to the halal butcher, no matter how good of a butcher he was, right? You take him to a doctor that specializes in that field. When we talk about mental health illness and awareness of how to tackle mental health, we also have to better understand the specializations in the field. Now, some of you may use the term counselor or hear the term counselor and think it's a one-size-fits-all, but it's definitely not. So there are different forms of counselors. You may find an LSCW, which is a licensed social worker who specializes in counseling. You may find someone who is an LPA, which is a licensed professional associate counselor. You may find someone who is a therapist that specializes in CBT or DBT or EMDR. And these are all different types of specializations. So if we were to look at the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist, for example, we know that a psychologist focuses more on the mental health aspects and how to challenge mental health approaches. They may be specialized in CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, or they may specialize in DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, or EMDR, which is the eye movement rapid desensitization process. Or you may see a psychiatrist who specializes in being able to prescribe medications, to identify a diagnosable illness and prescribe medications. So really understanding the differences in each form and each approach is just as important as turning to your insurance guidebook and figuring out who is a bone doctor, who is a GI specialist, who is a brain doctor. And so Together, we can learn a little bit more about those different specializations. There's also some incredible resources out there that we're going to talk about in our next episode in terms of how to find the best fit. What do you do when you or a loved one, a parent, a child may be struggling with mental health illnesses? So I hope that you continue to watch iTVusa as we continue in the last few nights of Ramadan to learn about how to be the best version of ourselves and how to improve on a mental and emotional level. Jazakumullahu khair. Wassalamu alaikum.